Welcome to the Here's Waldo podcast, where we sit down with top visionaries and creatives in the video game industry. Together, we'll unravel their journeys and learn more about the path they're forging ahead. Now, let's get started with the show.
I'm Lizzie Mintis, founder and CEO of Here's Waldo Recruiting, a boutique video game recruitment firm. This is the Here's Waldo podcast. In every episode, we dive deep into conversations with creatives, founders, and executives about what it takes to be successful. You can expect to hear valuable lessons from their journey and get a glimpse into the future of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Here's Waldo Recruiting, a boutique recruitment firm for the video game industry. We value quality over quantity, transparency, communication, and diversity. We partner with companies, creatives, and programmers to understand the why behind their needs. We provide a white glove experience that ensures a win-win outcome. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to the connector himself, Wallace Poulter. Thank you so much for connecting us and bringing us here today. That's what it's all about. Today, we have Gordon Walton with us. Gordon Walton has been building computer games for over 45 years. He is currently Chief Product Officer and Executive Producer at Playable Worlds, working on a new MMO with Raph Koster. Prior positions include VP and Executive Producer at Monumental, President and Executive Producer at ArtsCraft Entertainment, VP and Executive Producer at Playdom Austin, VP and co-GM at BioWare Austin, VP and Executive Producer at Sony Online Entertainment, Maxis, Origin, and Kesmai Corporation. He also led development at Konami of America and 360 Pacific and his own independent studios. Let's get started. Thank you for being here. You have been in the industry for 45 years and in MMOs for 25-ish. Can you give us a brief-ish summary of what led you to where you are today?
Let's see. I was actually building computer games while I was in college, even as I was entering college, back in the cassette days. And, after I got out of college, I went and got a real job, discovered that wasn't really for me, and have been doing games mostly ever since. So actually, I didn't really want to do anything significant. Little did I know that the industry would grow up into something significant eventually. So, we were just doing hobbyist stuff for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, we won, is the way I think about it. Gaming won. We weren't expecting to win, but we won because we became the number one entertainment medium. And that wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind, 25 years ago, even. We were thinking, okay, yeah, we're pretty cool, but, we're still, a big hit is, we sold 1 million copies. At a time that there were 3 or 4 billion people, right? So nowadays we're, half the population of the earth games. So we already won. So I'm like coasting is what I think. It's like, okay, the medium won. I'm just, I was lucky to be there early on and get to see a lot of the changes along the way.
So what were your aspirations when you started? It was a hobbyist project?
Oh, I wanted to do creative stuff, right? Just wanted to do interesting work. If you were a coder back in the 70s or the 80s, a commercial coder, the average kind of productivity was 100 lines of code a day. And, when you do games, you do many, many times that per day. And you're getting the direct feedback because they're interactive. So it was much more fun to write games than to write many other things in code. So I just wanted to code at the time. I was a coder and loved coding. And it was the most challenging coding I could come up with. So that was it. I like the challenge and I like being able to do stuff fast.
Yeah. I think people are really fun too because they love what they do and they're having so much fun doing it.
That came later when there were more people. Like when I started, it was like me, and then it was me and one other person. Then it was me and like 4 of my good buddies. And then, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it's hundreds of people working on a single game for years and years.
Yeah. Maybe thousands today.
Yeah.
The scale is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to Games Beat Next and there was a great talk in the Women in Games breakfast about how career paths are not a straight line, and sometimes you work in different roles that end up leading you where you need to go. What are some of the more unexpected career moves you've made, and what did you learn?
Well, I think, in my own career, it's, when I go speak to kids at colleges and stuff, they all go, well, tell me about how you did it so I can do it the same way. And I'm going, like, it'll never work. And, I was in a different place and a different time. Uh, Today, it's a very different ecosystem. The gaming ecosystem, in fact, changes every 3 to 5 years. It's pretty radically different. So it's more about meta rules than, like a specific way to do it. And I think most of it is just rolling with the punches and looking for where where's the action and where's the missing things, right? Who can I fill a gap? If you can fill a gap, you jump in and fill the gap. You're going to be one of those people that they want on a game team. Because what are game teams full of? They're full of gaps mostly, right? There's always a deficit of leadership, and there's always a deficit of like enough people to get all the work done. So if you can both produce a lot of work and or jump in where there's a hole and fill it in, I think that's where a lot of people's careers kind of move from one place to another. Because, well, I'm not an expert at that, but I'm willing to try and do it. And then next thing you know, you pick up another skill set. And every skill set, when you think about game development, it's multidisciplinary. So what you're really doing is learning to speak several different disciplines' languages. And the more of those you can speak, the more you can sit the intersection between them, which makes you more valuable to the overall project. So one of the advice that I do give a lot of the kids I see in college that are coming out is just, be an expert at what you do and then go learn something that you're not an expert at, because you're going to be more valuable if you know two things, even if you're not an expert at both. But be an expert at one, because you need to be an individual contributor for a while until you move into management.
Yeah.
The ante in our world is being good at what you do. If you think about it, right? We have a lot of people who want the jobs. They need to be really good at what they do, because we're not a stable industry, right? We're not thinking about we're not thinking about the next generation of stuff very often. We're thinking about, how do I get this product done today?
Right.
And if I can get this product done today, that's as far as my horizon goes. And even the big companies are pretty poor about managing their talent across over time, unless it's on a fixed franchise that's on a cyclical pattern. If it's a new IP, until it's proven, they're not thinking about where they're going to use that talent next, really, really.
Yeah.
Because we're just not that stable as an industry, right? We're not like the old studio system where they had a bazillion actors under contract and then would throw them on any old movie that came down the pipe, right? Where our specialties don't even lend themselves to that. And the way that we build products are not interchangeable parts either. People are not interchangeable parts. Even if they have the skills, they have to get along with the team. They have to work well with the others that happen to be put together on that team. And that's a whole other, the soft skills are really, really important for people in our business. And most colleges don't prepare you that well for that, or other educational institutes don't really prepare you well for soft skills when they're actually critical to your success.
Yeah, they're essential. I just chatted with Jenny, who has the company Talafa Games, and she went to MIT, and she said there's a course at MIT about soft skills in the industry to try and prepare you for that. And I love it.
Well, see, they're a smarter college. See, and they know that and they know a lot of their students are on the spectrum and need this too. So they have the smartest of the smart at MIT.
Yeah, there is definitely a big difference between IQ and EQ, and an intersection where they meet that is the best. It's hard to have a lot of both, for sure.
Well, I think it's also important for everyone to understand, because we do draw a lot of super bright people to our business.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, you're going to run into some people that are better than you. They're going to be smarter, or they're going to be better at the particular thing that you're. So the idea is it's not a race to be the best. It's a race to be the collective best at some level, right? Can our team accomplish more than another team? not am I the best person on the team and can I accomplish more than everybody else because I'm winning locally, right? And my local maxima is I'm the best of the best, and I don't really care about everybody else. Well, then probably the game's not going to work out that well either. You've got to, you have to care about the end result at some level even more than your own ego if you really want to get great stuff done.
I want to talk to you about what makes games successful. I know you have been a part of 200 games that have shipped or more, and you've seen so many different ups and downs. What do you think makes a game successful and not?
What's the best way to put this? So I'm going to say something a little philosophical. Every shipped game is a miracle.
Okay.
Right. So there's never enough, with the rare exceptions, right? There are some exceptions where actually there's enough resource to actually get the game done. But most of the time you're kind of undergunned and undersupplied to get the game done. So it's almost a faith-based enterprise. Like the team believes it into existence.
Yeah.
And not just wishes it, but builds it, right? They put the effort in to make it happen. And I don't mean crunch. I just mean that, it's an unlikely scenario to build software in the kind of time with the time and energy that we put into it to build it to a shippable point.
Yeah.
So I think every shipped game's a miracle first, right? So just getting it to actually get to the point where it can ship is amazing. And then it has to win in the market on top of that. And that's the second miracle. So I like to think of myself as being in the miracle squared business. And it doesn't always work out, right? You can't predict a hit. You can't predict something's going to be successful. The more you can predict it, the more derivative it tends to be and the less ambitious.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're not really predicting a hit. You're predicting, oh, yeah, it'll be financially successful, which is different than a hit, different than something that, matters to people's hearts and minds. It might be something that they enjoy, but it's not going to be with them when they're on their deathbed. Right. And I think the hits are more like things that have such an impact on people that, it's an endeavor, it's inscribed on their soul in some way. So, when I was working on Ultima Online a long time ago, I realized, a little ways into that experience, I go, there's going to be people on their deathbed who are hearing the intro music to this game in their head while they're on their deathbed because it's that, they've spent that much time in this world and they've invested so much energy into it. And that's what drew me into MMOs too, was the fact that we're not just entertaining, we're not just getting kind of mind share, we're getting life share out of people. Thousands of hours of energy being poured into this environment. And so that to me was, oh, this is the power of the medium of what we're doing. And I'm always interested in the frontiers. It's still a frontier at some level. We still don't understand it very well. We understand a lot more than we did 20 years ago, but I don't think anybody really understands it fully yet. And so for me, that's exciting whenever you're on the edge of something and figuring out, you do something and you go, wow, I didn't know that. Now I know a little bit more. And maybe that process is sometimes a little painful or obnoxious, but that's where all the exciting things are on the edge. If you think about it, right? The edge of the ocean hitting the where the water meets the land is where the interesting things are happening on an edge. So I think the whole business is really exciting. Even doing the most mundane things in the business is still exciting, but some of it is really, really exciting. So that's what's kept me interested and engaged in it all these years.
You're in the right place doing something you absolutely love. And I think your product is always more successful when you really love it and you love the mundane things even. What do you
Well, you
think?
have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're doing more than anything else. So absolutely. And have a good sense of humor too, huh?
Oh, well, that helps because yeah, it's not always fun and roses. I mean, if you think about, an average job, right? A real job, most people go to work. And why are they working? They're working to make money to go do something that they actually want to do. That's a job, right? Most of the people who work on games actually want to be making games, right? So they've already gotten a lot of benefit from that. But the truth is making games is like any other job, right? Most of it is perspiration, not inspiration. There are inspiring moments and there's inspiring, times, but a lot of it is just grinding it out, right? Like doing the work, right? And the work is not always, I mean, the work can be fulfilling and exciting, but a lot of it is a grind where you just, oh, we have to get this done for the whole game to work. And it's not the most exciting piece, but it must be there and it must be good, if not great. The stuff that we really focus on to make great, the differentiations, the things that are exciting, there's a lot of it, you can get a lot of energy back from that. But sometimes you're in the grind and you're not getting that much energy back from it unless you're thinking about the end result, even though the part you're doing is necessary but not sufficient to get to that end result.
I think that's just figuring out your purpose, like anything in life. And if you know your purpose and you see the greater vision, then all the bullshit along the way is tolerable.
Well, again, if you need to reconcile yourself that a lot of it's just work. It's just
Yeah.
stuff you have to do to make it work, to make
Yeah.
to get to the result that you want. And a lot of the closest thing to gaming is like high tech startups, where you're taking something from an idea to reality. And forget the guy, but he did the 0 to 1 book, and that's what Peter Thiel I think did that. But
Yeah.
0 to 1, you're going from nothing to something that's complete, right? And that's unusual. A lot of jobs aren't like that, right? Most jobs are like more process, and they're pieces of that. And I think we get the benefit and the joy of actually taking something from when nobody knew what it was until it's something that's fully realized and out in consumers' hands being played.
And with MMOs, you get to have such a community of people that,
Yeah, well, the joy and the pain of that. There's both,
yeah,
right?
that's
Because
very true.
when, and here's what's interesting about, the MMO land. Nobody understood connected audiences, right? Because if you think about audiences before your connections was really your social network, nobody else, right? Like your friends, your family could talk about stuff. Now, so many things are socially connected beyond, our small horizons. And with a socially connected audience, all the marketing rules change. If you're AT&T or Ma Bell 30 years ago selling phone stuff, if you call in and complain and somebody actually gives you your money back or something, who are you going to tell? You're going to tell your tiny little network, right? Now
Yeah.
you get now suddenly 2 million people know, oh yeah, here's the scam to get your money back if you're not satisfied, right? You can't treat a connected audience the way that audiences have been traditionally treated. And so we kind of pioneered that. If you think about it, MMOs were around before social media. And what social media is a subset of connected audiences, connecting audiences to do stuff. So yeah, that's why I found the field so interesting, right? You were combining not just with games, it's psychology and all this tech and all these specialties put together. And now suddenly you add sociology on top of psychology because it's not people, it's groups of people that are connected to each other and talking back to you. And so it gets more and more exciting as the scale goes up too. That's the other lesson. Scale matters.
So how do you go about building these communities or building your game around building the future community?
Well, a lot of people like to talk about building communities. I think you mostly steal them. Every once in a while you make one, right? But most of the time there's already affinity groups of people who are interested in particular things, and what you're trying to do is tap into those communities. Um, Back in the early 2000s, I got commissioned, go make a game, go make a brand new game, go make a new IP, MMO. And I went out and looked at existing communities and came up with 3 sets of kind of communities and said, okay, which one of these would make the most interesting game? And which of these communities are easier to steal, easier to co-op, to have a kickoff audience, right? Because you need an audience particularly for a social MMO game. You need an audience. So I think mostly what we're doing is trying to make stuff that will appeal to pre-existing communities nowadays. every once in a while you can come up with something novel enough to where it's viral enough to make its own community.
Yeah.
But remember, the biggest problem that everybody has, whether you're mobile or whether you're PC or console, is how do you get the word out to the right people to get them to come try your stuff? Discovery is the biggest problem. So anytime you can find a community that's going to have a natural affinity and again, steal or co-opt it, you want to do that first and foremost so that you can get the jump start before you have to go do all that heavy lifting or spend a ton more money. When game marketing suddenly became as big as game development or bigger, you've got a discovery problem.
Yeah. What do you think about marketing in 2023 and beyond? It's such a different game these days with influencers and Discord groups and all of this. Talk to me about the evolution and the future of it. Where do you think
Oh, I wish I understood the future. If I understood the future, I could get rich. But I think here's the challenge, right? I've been in this business a long time, and anybody who can forecast by 3 to 5 years out accurately is pretty rare, right? Because it's so dynamic. Think about it. We're at this intersection of kind of high tech entertainment and an evolving customer base. And what we build evolves the customer base. So stuff that's coming out all the time
Yeah.
is changing customer expectations. Once they play, name your game, right? Suddenly it makes a difference what they're going to play next, right? Their taste is evolving because of what we're offering them. And again, that audience is not uniform, right? There's a whole bunch of audiences, right, that are different. But now suddenly it gets harder and harder to kind of hit the zeitgeist of, a big audience. I think, micro impact, kind of micro targeting. If only we can make games cheaper, we could micro target a lot better. Games cost a lot nowadays, right? So that means that they almost have to get a big audience. And that makes the kind of the need to find, something that's universally or, large scale acceptable gets harder and harder for us because that audience, while some of it is super evolved in their taste, they're basically wine connoisseurs of gaming, right? And then, if you thought about this as drinking, right? There's people drinking Ripple wine way down here at the bottom. Just okay, I need a wine just to get a buzz, all the way up to I can tell you 17 flavors that are in this thing, just by taking a sniff of it, not even tasting it, right? So our audience is like that too, right? It's all over the map. And finding those audience segments and really satisfying them has become more and more challenging over time. And the mediums that we're using to reach people is changing constantly too. 10 years ago, Twitch was not much of a thing. You know, 3 or 4 years ago, TikTok wasn't much of a thing, right? Now it's a big thing, both of them. So this is going to continue to evolve. And, right now, business models haven't changed much since we went free to play, but business model changes also change everything. That's what I mean. The environment underneath us is constantly changing. We have 3 to 7 year development cycles, and the market's evolving literally year by year, if not faster. So we're trying to hit a target in the future. We're building something. Oh, I'm going to hit a target in the future, and the world's going to be just like that when we get there. And of course, it won't be, which means we're learning while we're developing, and maybe having to shift the target of what we're doing constantly, which is more difficult than building to a schedule, figuring out what you want and building it. We're iterating as we build based on what we're learning from the market as we build it. So it's highly dynamic. This is why it's so hit driven. This is why, it's a huge failure rate for most games. Most games will fail, and not just, I don't want to say most games won't ship. Most games that ship won't make money, right? Is the problem. And that it's not really a problem. It's a feature of what we do, right? We're making entertainment. We either find the audience or we don't. If we don't, we fail. If we do, sometimes we make a lot of money, right? If it finds a big audience, we make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's a very it's shocking to me at this point. 10 years ago, you couldn't find you couldn't find a game VC to save your life. I think there were 3 in the world, right? At that point, 20 years ago, there was 0, right? 10 years ago, there were like 3. Today, you can throw a rock and hit one, right? So there are hundreds, right, of game VCs, which always shocked me because I always thought when you think about our business, I always thought of it as a high risk, medium return business. And that sounds a little nuts, right? But even the biggest games, if you think about it, they're all games are high risk, but then only the biggest ones can do what you call a or nearing a high return, right? It's hard to make a unicorn out of a single game, right? Here's $1 billion enterprise out of a single game. How many games get to do that a year? Is it 3? Is it 1? Is it 5? It's not a very big number, considering if you look on the, like the Apple Store, right? So last time I looked, I think it was 200 to 400 games a day at the Apple Store. So and most of them are crap, right? But even so, even 20 years ago, I was looking. Oh, look, 2,500 games hit the shelves. PC games would hit the shelves a year. But who was winning? Like 50 of those games won. And now, if there were more, if anything, the percentage is smaller of the ones that hit versus the overall.
Yeah,
that hit.
Definitely. But there are those runaway games that a small team makes, and then they just go viral. And there are these people, they make games over and over again, and they're really successful at them. And that is so interesting to me.
Well, they have found an audience, right? They have an affinity group, is what that means. Their brand means something. But I think that's the challenge, right? It is a winner take all business at some level, and it's a easy entry business. I say that even though, at the high end, it's not easy entry. But like you and your 3 friends, if you have the right skills, can afford to make a game in your part-time, right? So we have a garage band thing going on all the way to, giant mega corporations making games, which is really cool. I'd like to think that where we are, not only is the ecosystem, right, of people who can make games is really, really diverse and big, but the palette we can paint on, if you think about all the devices that we put games on, which is pretty much any computer a consumer can put their hands on, we can make games for it. It doesn't matter if it's the Roku running your TV or anything else, right? Your phone, everything is game. We can put a game on it. And that's awesome. When you think about it, right? We have such a palette again that we can paint against if you're willing to do it. I mean, most hardcore gamers, they're thinking about PC or console or hardcore mobile, right? But the truth is, there's a super wide palette of places that we can do gaming. And to me, it's just exciting, right? The whole thing is exciting because we don't really know where the next big thing's going to come out of. If you look at the history of innovation, it always comes from the far edges and from weird places. And then it becomes mainstream later, and it's not deterministic how that happens. Because if it was, I'd give you a checklist and you go make a hit, right? Here's the checklist, make a hit. Doesn't work that way.
People also feel strongly about new and emergent technologies, big opinions whenever something new comes out. And then
I used to be that way too, but then I got commercial. And when you get commercial, you go, wait a minute, what's the install base? What percentage of the install base do I have to capture to make my money back? And it becomes, oh, wait, emerging technologies aren't that exciting if they're small. And they always start small. So you have to be willing, if you're going to play in that arena, to play at that's a super high risk area to play in. So you're kind of betting on everything working, right?
Yeah.
You're betting on that technology is going to be the one that takes off and becomes mainstream. I started not started, but later when I was doing more PC work, I actually did more Macintosh games than PC games. Why? I love the Mac. I did a lot of work on the Mac. I love the Mac. And then, the PC just kept selling and selling and selling and selling. And one day I just stopped doing Mac things. Why? Because $1 in that gave $10 out on the PC, $1 in gave $1 out on the Mac because there were 10 times as many PCs as Mac, later 100 times as many PCs as Macs, right? So eventually you're chasing, if you really want broad scale entertainment, you have to go where the players are, right? Where the customers have the tech. What's the biggest platform in the world that hardly anybody works? I mean, people do work on it, but all our hardcore gamers kind of poo-poo it. It's a web browser. Web browser is the largest accessible platform in the world. Not the PC. It's not the Mac. It's not any gaming machine. It's the web browser has the biggest install base. If you can do a cool game on the web, you can reach the most people theoretically. So
Yeah.
it's really about, how do you do that, right? Who's that audience? How can you reach them?
And get involved with the community. How can you steal the community?
Yeah, of course, stealing is important. Think about it. Almost all our games are stolen too. We take other people's ideas, file the serial numbers off, and combine them in a different way, and then ship them. Right. So that's because you can't copyright gameplay, it actually opened it up for us to have a wider diversity of things available to us as consumers.
I want to hear a little bit about Playable Worlds, and I want you to pretend like I'm a really exciting candidate that doesn't know too much about you, and you really want to hire me. What would you tell me? What's your spiel?
Well, the first time I would have to NDA you because we haven't said much about what we're doing.
Okay, what can you say?
See, is that terrible?
I
Or what?
haven't signed an NDA. I might not, but you want to give me some teasers.
I think we're working on a MMO. I can say that.
Okay.
It is kind of metaversey, is what I would say. It has some metaverse elements. We are not Web3 in any way, shape, or form. And we have some very experienced people working on our team, right? So, and that's about the end of what I can say, unfortunately, because we've kept it under wraps for a reason. When we're ready to roll it out, we want to roll it out. And here's one of the challenges when you look at our market again, right? So if anything, the consumers are less patient than they've ever been.
Yes.
They have less deferred gratification, less the anticipation is a dirty word, not a titillating word in any way, shape, or form for the audience. So it's really difficult sometimes. In the old days, we would announce a game 2 or 3 years before it was going to ship, do some updates at big trade shows, and then one day, and then probably slip it a year, and then finally ship it, right? That's not working as well as it used to be, except for established franchises, because the consumers, again, are more sophisticated than they've ever been, more educated than they've ever been, have a bigger, background in gaming. If I announce XYZ game today and I'm not going to ship it for 2 years even, the expectations for that game start to grow the day I announce it. So the mental model of what the player has in their head about what that game's going to be starts getting better and better, probably faster than I'm developing whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Or releasing information, right?
Yeah.
And how many games have you seen where people are kind of underwhelmed when it finally ships? It's this phenomenon that's driving that. The phenomenon is our players just don't have, it's driven by other mediums of, entertainment where, it used to be you could see 30 seconds of a TV show before they would cut to a new scene. And today it's 3 to 4 seconds almost, right? If it's kids' TV, it's 2 to 4 seconds, right? So we are being trained to have less and less of an attention span, less and less of kind of any deferred gratification, because we've catered to the consumer. The consumer doesn't like that, and they've trained us to not do that at some level. So that's what leads us to be a little bit reticent to really announce what we're doing. You still see people doing it, and I wish them luck. As again, the consumer expectations can so easily outstrip what we're building, right? Because even though we try to go fast, we're going as fast as we can, but their imagination is bigger than our implementation skills.
I've never heard it put quite like that, but I like it. That makes sense. We'll follow along for updates eagerly.
Yes. Well,
with a little expectation.
we're doing it. Okay, so what am I drawn to? I'm drawn to really hard things to do that are interesting and might change the marketplace. That's the only thing I'm interested in doing at my age and place in the business. I'm not interested in, if I wanted an easy job, there's a relatively easy. There's no easy jobs in gaming, but there's easier jobs than the one I have. I could easily go get
Yeah.
rather than do this. So for me, it's all about the challenge, all about, can we break some new ground? Can we do something a little different? Where can we push the boundaries? So I'm interested in the edge, like I said. I'm not
Yeah.
interested in the mainstream. I'm interested in the edge.
Without revealing what you are doing and what your edge is, can you just chat a little bit about what different edges you think are in games right now and how people can stay ahead of the curve? There's so much evolution.
Wow. Again, thinking outside the mainstream hardcore gaming box is big. I mean, think about all the people who are not hardcore gamers that we serve, but we don't really, so many of the big companies don't focus on,
Yeah.
right? So for a little while, the social gaming actually, kind of focused on non-gaming gamers, for a while, and that worked. And mobile, to a big extent, tries to do that now. But the discovery problems and the privacy issues now have made that economically less viable. So, but I think the audience is still there. I think there's still a whole bunch of people who are not in our audience yet who would be in it if we could bring them the entertainment that matched what they were interested in. So again, thinking outside the mainstream, whether it be in the genres or the platforms or even the territories, right? So, while we weren't looking, India's game market finally grew up some, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be big. It's going to be bigger than China before the decade's out. People just don't understand why, but that's going to happen. And when we were doing MMOs back in the early 2000s, Korea already had become a kind of a fully integrated online, country, right? At one point, over half of the country had an account to play whatever the name of the game was, kart racer or whatever, right? Like the racing game. Half of the country had an account to play it.
Wow.
So we've never seen that anywhere else. We've never seen that still in the United States or any Western country. So the opportunities are all out there, but they aren't where everyone else is going. You're always going to be going someplace where nobody else is going or very few people are going if you really want to go for the opportunities. And there'll be a high rate of failure at the same time, right? They won't all work. So if you can embrace the learning of failure and not let it get you down too much, there's a ton of opportunities out there.
In unique places. I like that you
Yeah.
mentioned India. I like to listen to the Deconstructor of Fun podcast.
Yeah, I just heard that the other day too.
Okay, you heard the episode about India?
Yeah, and I started going to India in the early 2000s, and there was almost no gaming going on there, right? And then they started doing some gaming outsourcing, and they were behind us, but now they're right up with us, right? Again, it's every time somebody goes, "Oh yeah, that country's behind us," well, give them a few years.
Yeah.
Everyone out there is just as smart and just as motivated as anybody over here. So you can't, whatever you're thinking, whatever superiority you have, you're really competing with the entire world. And if you think about India and China have more smart people than America has people. Think about that for a second.
That's very
Just for a second, right? It's an issue, right? So if you're really competing on brains, right, they got a lot more of them. So, we need to have a little bit of humility and, focus on what we do best as much as we can.
I thought the podcast is really interesting. I didn't know that 2/3 of India is not using credit cards.
Oh yeah. Well, different territories have if you get into the payment stuff, that didn't surprise me at all. There are several, even European territories that have very strange to us payment methods predominate.
Yeah.
We think Visa, MasterCard, but there's a whole bunch of territories in Europe where that's not a thing, right? Where it's 5% of the payment method, and there's like, oh yeah, we do it through the bank. It's a bank payment thing, or it's the Denmark card, right? Which is all Denmark have. Everybody in Denmark has, or whatever. Right? There's a bunch of different every sovereign entity has solved this a little bit different.
I think that's also why it's so important to have a team that is comprised of people who don't think just like you and maybe come from somewhere else or have a little bit different of a background so they can point these things out. Because you're right, it's so easy to just think, this is how I play games. This is my little world, right?
Well, frankly, that's what we were doing when gaming started, right? It was a bunch of nerdy, nerdy white guys mostly, right? Who
Yes.
had the privilege of, oh, I've got a computer and this is what, and I can do this. So I'm middle class probably, and I've got a computer and I've got enough of a safety net to where I can do something crazy and stupid for a
Yeah.
living. Believe me, it was 20 years before my family figured out what I was doing was legit in any way, shape, or form, right? I was that odd person doing, what do? You do games. That's strange, right? That's really weird. I never heard of anybody doing that. Now we're all mainstreamed, right? But for a long time, it was, what the hell? What the hell are you doing? Right. So, but we were hobbyists building games for other hobbyists, is the way to think about the really early market. And then we got more and more people who were not hobbyists to go, oh, yeah, that's fun. And,
Yeah.
it expanded slowly but surely. And then whenever a team is saying we're building a game for us, what they're saying is I'm limiting the audience to who we are. And the less diverse that team is, the narrower that audience is going to be.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard. To me, one of the signs of professionalism is, can you set your own worldview prejudices aside and try to get in the shoes of this other person who's not you and understand what their worldview is and what excites them? Can you do that? And of course, the more degrees of difference there is between you and them, the harder it is for you to do that. And frankly, the younger you are, the harder it is for you to do it because you don't have the life experience either. You haven't had enough scar tissue and bumps and bruises to maybe have a little bit of retrospective, looking at things and then trying to think about it from another person's viewpoint. So, and I don't mean that only old people figure this out. A lot of young people are super empathetic and figure this stuff out, right? But in general, it took me a while to figure this stuff out, right? I didn't wake up one day and just go, "Ooh, I figured it all out." No, it took a process of going, "Wait a minute, somebody explained to me, wait, I don't look at the world the same way you do at all, right? I have a different life experience and a different lens that I'm looking at the world through." And yeah, and they can explain it to some degree, but I'll never 100% get it. It's like if you move to a foreign country, you're never going to be a citizen of that foreign country per se, right? You're not going to be fully integrated into that because you didn't grow up there, right? You don't have all the nuances. You can learn a lot, but you can never get to. Most people can never get to 100%. Almost forget their past and become their present.
I have a friend named Julie, and I think I've talked about her on my podcast, Julie Pham. She has a company called Curiosity Based. She started her business when I started my business, and she has a TEDx talk coming up. I'm so proud of her. But her
Wow.
business is all about being curious about why people are the way that they are. And it's an exercise that you can go through. There's a course that I let everybody in my company go through. And it's just thinking about why you are the way that you are and why other people are the way that they are. You have all these life experiences. You're from this culture. This is the way your family raised you. This is, something major that happened in your life that changed you. And it's really powerful to think about that in recruiting too, and business and everything, right? This person is odd, or I think they're rude, or I don't understand why they are the way that they are, but curious. It's not offensive, right?
Well,
Maybe.
we can't help it. Our part of our makeup is to be judge, is to judge things.
Yeah.
It's a safety mechanism at some level. So, and we have filters and lenses that we look at the world through, and most of those come from scar tissue. Like, somebody looking at me today is going to go, some bald guy was mean to me one time. I don't like that guy, right? Why? Because they have a lens around it, right? There's a
Yeah.
lens and a filter that's on, and that comes from the background, and they may not even be conscious of it either, right? It's an unconscious lens quite often. So whenever I'm doing this, I'm always trying to catch myself. Okay, what's real and what's my internal stuff going on that's making me, why am I flipping the bozo bit on this person? Why do I think they're a bozo? Let me back up for a minute. What triggered that, right? Is it real or is it just a pattern match that hits a filter that I have from something that happened to me in the past? So, trying to process all your own crap and figure that stuff out and not let it interfere with your present is part of being human, right? How do we be better humans? It's hard to be a good human. Most of us are failing at that at some level all the time. But, in the end, we're in a people business, right? Only teams build these things. If we can't get along with people, if we can't get the best out of the people that we work with, we can't make the best stuff. So my job, what's my job? My job is to design a team that makes a game. My job is not to make games anymore. I don't make games. I don't get to do any of the work, right? So my job is to build a team that can make a game, not build games per se. Yeah, I got a chief creative person who does part of it, and I got a game director who does part of it, but I'm not doing that stuff. What I'm doing is giving them the right ecosystem to build the game with it that's made out of people.
People are the most important. So I read your LinkedIn as, of course, I'm a recruiter. That's what I do. That's my medium. And I would just want to read one of your LinkedIn recommendations. It's profound and inspiring. It says, Gordon is one of the most thoughtful and progressive managers I've worked with. He is constantly on the lookout for new ways to break down barriers, to communicate effectively, and how to enable people to give their best and become better without burning out in the process. That's such a sweet recommendation. I just want to know more about your leadership beliefs and how you enable people to give their best and become
So
better.
first thing I say is I fooled another one. Awesome. No. But
So you have
no,
a lot of these. There's no fooling.
yeah, I know, but I'm a human like anybody else. I'm not perfect, right? I make mistakes. I make bad judgments. I think the key thing is are you trying to learn, right? So as a one of my things is when I hit one of those 5-year birthday things, right? I always try to look back and go, okay, what's changed in the last 5 years? What was like, what was Gordon like 5 years ago? And about the third time I did it, and my what I finally figured out each time, right at the end of that assessment, I go, yeah, Gordon was a dumbass 5 years ago. Is
Yeah.
what I figured out each time. And about the third time that happened, I figured out, oh wait, Gordon's a dumbass now. I just don't know it. I'll know it in 5 years from now, but I'm a dumbass right now. So that's the thing. If you're not trying to learn, if you're not trying to change, then you might as well, you're already dead, right? You just haven't. You're walking around like a corpse, right? You're either trying to improve or you aren't. And I think that for me, it's always been about change. Can I adapt to the changes that are happening around me? Can I be a better contributor in the things that I'm trying to do? What's holding me back in that, right? Like what? Because I think mostly, it's easy to blame the external world for crap that happens to you,
Yes.
but it's harder to look at yourself and go, why what part did I have in this happening? Right. And what's lesson should I actually embrace to avoid that kind of future pain by not doing something dumb that I shouldn't have done that got me here. Right. So I think that's the human challenge. How do you actually end up not only and not doing it out of some altruism thing? It's selfish. It's totally selfish. I want to be more effective. So I'm totally selfish. I'm only doing this because it works, not because, of any other reason, right? Not oh yeah, because I'll be a better person at the end of the day. No, I want to be more effective. And the only way to be more effective is to connect with people and try to get the best out of them and grow them where you can and use them at things that they're going to succeed at rather than trying to use them for stuff that they're going to struggle with in a team, for example. Like people can be miscast.
Yeah.
And the saddest thing is when somebody is energetic and enthused about something that they have absolutely no talent for. And
Yes.
they're like doomed to failure, even though they're going to put all their energy into it. And, that that's the worst case scenario for any employee that I've ever had is, how do I get them to get on a track where they might actually be successful rather than stay on a track where they're pounding their head against a brick wall,
Yeah.
which isn't really that common, but it does happen.
Yeah. I always think about, do people get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do the job? And there's several where you can move people around, the good people around, but sometimes one of those is missing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Management's hard. I like what you said about taking responsibility for everything. I used to read a lot of just Tony Robbins-y kind of books, but I feel inspired by them. And I listened to this talk once by Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a love him or hate him kind of person, right? But I always think there's some goodness you can extract from many different people. And he talked about how the most life-changing thing for him was taking responsibility for everything. Like, oh, a bus almost hit me. What did I do wrong? All of that. And once you do that, your whole life changes because everything is your fault, even if it's not your fault. Like,
I mean, the only thing that I could, if I get hit by a meteor, I'll call that act of God, right? I'll never see it coming. There was nothing I could do to dodge it, yada, yada, yada.
Totally.
But almost everything else, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Who brought you there? You brought yourself there, right? You did, So yeah, taking responsibility for your own actions is really important if you want to grow, right? And most people can't do 100% of that or even 90% of that. So I don't fault people for not being able to do it because it's tough, right? It means that you got to have some uncomfortable conversations with the worst boss you'll ever have, which is yourself, right?
It's the worst boss. Yeah.
But nobody's a worse boss than yourself. You run your own company, right? So
I am my own boss. I was reading
that's what I mean.
and it said,
who criticizes you the most? You do at night when you're staring at the ceiling.
Yeah, definitely.
I know. Done that a few times too.
Oh, but for me, the trick is to get myself a boss, get my own board of directors or my own people that can call me on my shit or inspire me or talk me through when I have a hard day.
You're still tougher than they are, though. You're still going to be tougher on yourself than they are.
That's true. Having your own business is a big adventure. The book I was reading said a lot of people go into business themselves so they can get out of having a boss. But like you said, turns out you have the worst boss of all time, and it's you, and you have to do the stuff yourself.
Yep. And you have to forgive yourself too, is the other half of that, right?
Yeah.
So, because otherwise you get in that cycle of beating yourself up, and that's not positive. It doesn't help anything.
Yeah. Or just hire people smarter than you to help you with the things.
Yeah, but then they're all racehorses and they're hard to manage. But racehorses and draft horses is one way to think about employees, right? Some of them just pull the thing and good stuff happens. They're steady and they make stuff happen. And the racehorses can make amazing thing happen, but they're always kind of tugging at the reins or kind of running off to the left or running off to the right. So you need both, right? You need the ones who will break out. You'll need the ones that just keep the thing moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. And if you have a business, you're probably a racehorse and paying to manage yourself, it turns out. Just speaking from experience here.
Yep.
I have one last question before I ask it. I want to point people to your website, Playable
Worlds.com.
Yes, that is it. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received in your career? And
wow, that's not expected. Damn, did I listen to or didn't listen to?
Well, it could be either. It sounds like you might be a racehorse.
I'm just stalling. I'm stalling because it's hard to come up with one.
Well, you can have a couple. I mean, I'm sure there's people that have really influenced your career and a lot of them along the way, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'll cast it a little differently. The best bosses I've ever had let me run, right? They said, they gave me a mission and then they helped me get there, right? They stepped back and said, they didn't care about the how, they cared about the what.
Yeah.
So when somebody gives me a what mission, this is, here's what I want. And if I get behind it and they're not micromanaging how I can do, then I can do my best work, right? The hardest bosses are the ones that where they want to be intricately involved with the how. Well, how are you doing that? Well, here, let's tweak this for you and help you with, then it's not yours anymore, right? Then you don't own it completely. So, wow, so much advice over the years. I remember somebody told me once, don't work for a family-owned company, and then I did it, and that was good advice that I didn't take. So there you go. I've done that a couple times. I worked for a couple of family-owned companies. So don't do that. If you want to, if you're, working for them as like a worker is probably fine. Working for them if you're a manager, probably not as fine.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I can't give you a really great answer because I wasn't ready for that one, and it's like a cacophony of little pieces of advice here, there, and there. But I think mostly it's about the great relationships with people. That when I think about my career, it's really more about the people I've been privileged to work with who've made me better.
Yeah.
That's what gets me excited, and seeing people that work for me that have gone further than I did. That's really exciting, super exciting to see people who kind of lap you. But frankly, I never wanted to be more than what I am. Like exec producer is kind of where I'm happiest. I don't really want to be the next level of suit above that because I still get to touch product a little bit. I get to work with the best people in the world, which are people building product. So that's, I found my niche 20, 30 years ago, and this is where I've wanted to stay, even though I've been tempted once or twice to, go the route beyond this. But that's a different game, right? It's a different, playing the corporate game's a different meta game than making games. Yeah. A lot of that meta game doesn't have anything to do with making games.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
anything, it has to do with making it harder to make games. So
A lot of red tape. Sounds like you're just where you need to be. We've been talking to Gordon Walton, Chief Product Officer and Executive Producer at Playable Worlds. Gordon, where can people go to follow along with Playable Worlds or contact you? Are you on Twitter/X, LinkedIn?
I'm on X. I'm on, LinkedIn. I'm still on Facebook because I'm an old fogey and haven't completely bounced off. I killed one of my accounts, but then I have kind of a business account there. Yeah, definitely on LinkedIn. I'm pretty accessible. I've been in the business a really long time, held a lot of jobs, know a lot of people, uh, and really, again, enjoy the people who are in the game business, right? So I'm one of the, 25 people who went to the first GDC that ever happened. I've been to every one since, and I think there's two of us left that have been to every GDC. So we're in a race for who dies last on that. But this community is something that I really cherish. The community of game makers is something I cherish because we're collegiate. We compete with each other, but we collaborate at the same time in a way that I rarely see in any other industry. And that makes us special if we weren't special enough already.
It is a special group. Everybody is so supportive, and it's really a community. It's a lot of fun. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. To catch all the latest from Here's Waldo, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.